Morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the April 11th, 2025 Long Range Planning Committee meeting. Our first item this morning is a roll call. Autumn, if you would, please.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Alan Paul,
Here.
Rick Schnee, Peter Freilinger,
Here.
Robin Saunders,
Here.
Portia Hirschman,
Here.
Jean Marie Caterina, Judy Fisher, Rachel Hendrickson,
Here.
Corey Fellow,
Here.
John Anderson. And I show that Jean Marie Caterina just walked in. All right. And we have 4 regular members. She's an alternate.
I'm
She's an alternate. All right,
I
thank
saw
you.
all of you look going.
That's okay.
He's everywhere. He's everywhere.
She's just a regular person now on our
Just a
regular
regular
citizen
person.
committee.
So she is an alternate on the committee.
Yes, I don't vote unless you need someone to vote.
Well, I have a missing member.
We don't, well, I mean, we don't need her to make a quorum, but you can, we have 4 regular. members.
But she can vote.
But she can vote.
But she can vote, yeah.
Yeah.
So I need to move her up into a voting role.
Okay.
It's a good thing I showed up, huh?
No, I got a quorum.
Just.
You-
Almost always I do.
We're so is
Yeah.
late,
So
so.
do we want to do that now?
Yeah, I should wait.
Wait, wait and see.
Well, yeah,
Practically
I should
speaking,
wait.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
not that we want to give a get out of jail free card to be
Yeah.
5 minutes late every time, but.
I
otherwise,
hear it.
5 minutes late.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, could you remind us who the liaisons are to the committee?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The planning board liaison is Rachel Hendrickson and the council liaison are Corey Fellows and John Anderson.
Thank you.
And Robin John's not here. I'm not sure if you heard that one.
Okay, thank you.
Is Portia still
She's a
the
regular-
representative of the transportation committee or
No,
Peter?
I'm now.
Peter is.
Yes. Switch that up.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to totally complete the request. Our next item on the agenda this morning is approval of minutes of last month.
I saw one minor item.
We need at least a motion, Peter.
I will move. But I see one, there's, oh,
Okay, so Peter and then Portia.
and then there was one minor item. I was supposed to say that the transportation committee had not met. I had meant to say that I had not attended that meeting. When it-
Oh, okay, I think we took verbatim minutes, so I didn't.
Yeah, so it was, either I misspoke or it was mistranscribed. So,
Honestly, you misspoke. We'll fix it.
gotcha, yeah.
All right. Any other comments?
Thank you, yeah.
Come on, Sarah.
Yeah.
Other comments? Hearing, seeing none. Robin, comments? No, all right. In which case, all in favor of passing the minutes?
Oh, since Robin's online, we should probably do a roll call vote.
Okay,
I know, but
Yeah, but
it's,
you gotta do a
that's
roll
what we
call if
do.
you've got-
Alan Paul,
yes.
Peter Freilinger.
Yes,
Robin Saunders. Say aye.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Sorry.
Thank
thanks.
you. Portia Hirschman. Aye. Thanks. And we're still waiting on Rick.
We're still waiting on Rick.
But I'm an I in case you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so there's 2 items on the agenda this morning. One is the short-term housing situation. The other has to do with a firing range item that we'll be discussing after the fact. So, and I'm saying this only because I will now look for any general comments, public comments that people would like to make, with the exception of those 2 items. So if there's anybody who'd like to make a public comment other than those 2 items, I would take that now. For those of you online, if you know how to raise your hand or at least let us know that you'd like to make a comment.
You got people behind you.
I got people behind me. Anybody raising a hand? I am not seeing any. Thank you. I will move on to the next item. Item 5, discuss and consider a recommendation to the ordinance committee creating a short-term rental registration ordinance. I will now take public comment on this particular item. Rick is here. Let the record show that, please. But I would ask people if they would please limit their comments to 3 minutes each, please. I can't see behind me.
Where do
and-
you want them to?
Well, that's a great
can-
question. Maybe the end of the table?
We can stand, or you all can come to the chair. For those of you online, if you'll put your hands up, I'll do my best
All of
to.
those are charity.
No, I don't want
you
anyone to.
Oh, that's
At
right,
the
we don't
table.
want them at the table.
Oh.
Yep.
For those of you online, if you'll put your hand up, I'll try to take you in order that I see you. I will, if I can, add everything that I had received via email up until Wednesday has been passed on to the committee. What I received yesterday has not yet. So just for that information. So who wants to go first? Line up.
I think that's how it went.
Yeah. And please, for the record, state
Yep.
your name and address. And then if you haven't already signed in, please sign in before you go. And that way I'll have everything.
Yeah, checked
Thank
off
you
all
so
the
much.
boxes.
It is, thank you. It is now roughly on this clock, 7 or 8 minutes after 8. I'm gonna try to limit
I
the
won't-
total discussion to about 20 minutes so we can get on with our agenda. Please.
Thank you, Helen.
Yep.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Townsend. I'm a resident of 2 Acorn Lane here in Scarborough. I'm standing in front of you this morning wearing 3 hats, although not physically wearing any. One is as an owner of a short-term rental here in Scarborough located at Higgins Beach. The second is as an owner of HigginsBeachMaine.com, where we're involved professionally with about 100 different properties down at Higgins Beach. And then the third is as a realtor, where I took an oath to advocate for and protect homeownership rights. So that's how I stand here before you today. I just want to make a point. We've been talking about this now for a couple of years. I've said this before, we're trying to solve a problem that we don't have. There may be a few isolated incidences of complaints, just like there are complaints from neighbor to neighbor. Noise or unregistered vehicles or extra traffic, those complaints do happen in a town of 10,000 residents. We've been professionally involved in managing property down at Higgins Beach for over 25 years. And those rentals have existed from the time before I was even born, whether it be Prouts Neck, Pine Point, Higgins Beach. Scarborough has a rich history of short-term rentals. That's the reason I now am proud to call Scarborough home, because my family came renting. My grandparents started coming renting when they were in their 20s. So that history goes back over 100 years. And the point that I want to make today is the things that are discussed in the ordinances. Our company already does. We have a requirement of owners for insurance. We do safety checklists. Our team has been through intensive training on safety. And we administer and adhere to the good neighbor ordinance that's already in place in Scarborough. And we don't tolerate it. So if we do have a renter that comes to vacation with us in the summertime, which is typically when it is, and if they don't comply with the owner's rules of the house, our rules, the town's rules, they're not welcome back. And because of that, we don't have issues. I mean, we keep a finger on the pulse of this. Jean Marie, I don't know if you remember, probably like 5 years ago, we were at a realtor training event and we were just asking, from the council standpoint, do you get any complaints about Higgins Beach? And I believe the answer at that time was no. And I hope that it still is, because as a community, we don't tolerate that. Owners that live year round next to properties that we manage that are short term, Most of them have my cell phone. If not, they have our after hours phone. So they have a way to reach us. We tell them that we want to be good neighbors. If you see something that you don't like, or you don't think the owner would like, or you don't think we would like, please let us know. We can't be everywhere. And we respond very quickly to those things. So, and I know it's the same in the other communities where more than 90% of the short-term rentals reside in those 3 different communities, whether it be Crouse Neck, Pine Point, or Higgins Beach. And a majority of those, I would say more than 80% are professionally managed. So I don't know that we need an ordinance in place that already does what we're doing. It's just going to create more work, more paperwork, and it's going to be a major burden on those businesses in this town. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Delaquilla, and this is my husband, Timothy Myers. We live at 104 Fog Road. I wrote something because we've been not in the know of these meetings for almost the past 2 years. So I feel like I needed to organize my thoughts in a way to present to you all, and I didn't want to miss anything. So pardon that I'm reading, but this was a well thought out thing. Tim's been a resident here in Maine since he was 14 years old, and myself for the past 5 years. We're here to share our perspective regarding the recent planning meetings concerning short-term rental regulations. We were contacted by Scott Townsend last Friday and were surprised to learn that our names and property have been part of the ongoing discussion. After reviewing the meeting recordings, it appears that our neighbors, Kate and Ellen from Mass Road, are using our unfortunate and traumatic fire incident to our property as a way to support their agenda in trying to shape the regulation of Scarborough short-term rentals. So now we appreciate the opportunity to share our story and several misconceptions. We have been renting our primary residence since shortly after as a short-term rental, shortly after we moved in on September 21. On average, we rent our home for about 3 to 4 weeks a year, only when we're traveling. We believe that we are among the few, if any, Scarborough homeowners besides us who rent their owner-occupied primary home on Airbnb, especially outside of the beach areas. Many other short-term rental properties we've seen appear to be solely investment properties with no personal touches or evidence of being a primary residence. This is not the case with us. This is our home. Because it's our personal space, we're extremely selective with our guests. We personally communicate with every renter to ensure that they understand the rules and ask our trusted neighbors to keep an eye on things. A few years ago, we had a group of golfers who arrived home late one night and were out in the driveway and being loud. A neighbor texted us about it first thing in the morning. We immediately addressed it with the guests and left them a poor review. That is only one of 2 negative experiences we've had in more than I've been hosting for 8 years. Outside of this home, I've had a previous home in Western Massachusetts. Our reviews reflect this: over 120 reviews and a 4.83 rating, often qualifying us as superhosts. To be clear, this is not a business venture for us. We do not own investment properties. Our home is not and never has been used solely for rental income. Hosting guests a few weeks a year has allowed us to offset the cost of travel and allowed us to share our space with others in a responsible way. Regarding the fire that occurred on our property on April 9th, 2023, this was a tragic and purely accidental event that had nothing to do with Airbnb guests. We've heard that it's been insinuated that we had guests in our spaces while this happened, and this is completely untrue. We were home at the time, celebrating Easter with family. There were no renters at our home that weekend, only family. We did not even realize that the fire had started until someone pulled into our driveway and told us our buildings out back were on fire. We did not even realize this. The fire department took about 15 minutes to arrive, partially due to the confusion of the address. They went to the neighborhood behind on Pleasant Hill because they thought it was back there. It was a deeply and upsetting experience and one we continue to process. Despite that, we've heard that Kate and Ellen have suggested at a public meeting that our fire was caused by a renter. This is entirely false, and we have documentation, photos, reports, and Airbnb records to support our stance. Suggesting otherwise feels like a deliberate attempt to discredit us and shape short-term regulations based on misinformation. We've had minimal interaction with Kate and Ellen, though we initially appreciated Ellen's concern the day after the fire. She came into our backyard and asked what had happened, and I told her.
Are you close to done, ma'am? Your time is up.
Yeah. So last year we began building a structure with our property out back to replace the fire. And we've been working with Brian Longstaff to ensure that the plans are fully compliant with short-term rental guidelines. Because we're developing this plan in accordance with Scarborough's existing plan, we want to be ensured that we'll still be able to use this as a short-term rental.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For those of you online, I don't know if you can hold your, if you're unable to put your hand up. I see some people waving. I will get to you after we take the in-person comment. So you can send me a chat or I'll just call on you individually as we go. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Allison Bristol, 6 Bayview Avenue at Higgins Beach. And I am responding to the meeting that was held. I was away, I wasn't able to go to that, and also the agenda online. First thing I wanted to comment on was what's stated as the purpose of doing the short-term rentals, as is on your agenda today, is to monitor and track short-term rentals to ensure compliance with safety codes. There's a mixed message being sent out by the town, by council. The council just sent out in the newsletter that the council goal is to create short-term rentals to align with town objectives on affordable and workforce housing and ensure.
Brad Willauer.
The purpose on the presentation also says to
Not his
protect and the proliferation of corporate investment. And I can assure you, I mean, Scott would know this better than I, and I would support what Scott just said. Higgins Beach has a generational relationship with short-term rentals. My house, the previous owner rented it for 50 years. I consider myself third generation. And so I think it's fair to say, and I'm like Scott, that nobody is necessarily buying up properties at Higgins Beach as a corporate investment. If anything, keeping it affordable for people who have had these homes for years is why people rent it, so they can pay their taxes. So I think this is something to consider. Also in the purpose of this, in the PowerPoint, is to protect neighborhoods from noise, traffic, character, and safety. And I would say we already have ordinances in place in town to do that. Enforcement, I think, would become the same challenge that it's been with other ordinances. I was involved with the marijuana discussions, part of the marijuana moratorium committee. And it basically the odor issues were not enforceable. There are a lot of things that happen in the summer at Higgins that aren't enforceable because there just aren't enough man hours for Brian, for the police department, I'm assuming for the fire department to respond to every complaint, and I would say particularly on the weekends. The other one thing I wanted to suggest is in the PowerPoint presentation, Autumn showed some communities that have location-based ordinances or specific area ordinances, and I might suggest to this committee that you consider doing an overlay, so Higgins Beach, Prouts, and Pine Point would be excluded. And again, as Scott said at the meeting, I would say for the most part, the rentals in those communities are professionally managed. And lastly, what I wanted to add, well, two things. I've had several conversations with John Anderson about public outreach, and that one size doesn't fit all in Scarborough and the importance of meeting people where they are. So what I would like to suggest, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm on the board of the Higgins Beach Association. We've had successful meetings down in town, like the Vulnerability Assessment Committee.
Can I ask you to wrap it up, please?
Just want to make a recommendation that if Karen, we'll look at Corey because he's also on ordinance, is planning on looking at this at the July meeting. I think that would probably be July 9th if it's the second Wednesday in July. I'd be more than happy to organize a meeting at the Higgins Beach Clubhouse, and it would do wonders to have the town come and talk to people one-on-one and meet them where they are.
Thank you, Allison.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have to bring people to a 2-minute limit if we're gonna end. keep this on time, and noting that we have quite a few people online who wish to speak, so.
Okay, is that
Well, you've already given some people
Three.
so I don't think it's appropriate now.
Oh,
Now we're
okay.
halfway through it, that they can only,
Then do we want to extend this to another meeting? So
we may end up doing that, but I
Yep.
don't think you change the rules of public comment halfway through.
Well, then
the public comment.
I would-
May I make a suggestion?
You may.
I would suggest you stay with your 3-minute rule. You said you're gonna end at 8:27. If the time runs out, then you can ask people to submit their testimony in writing.
okay?
That's my suggestion.
I would agree with that, because otherwise we're gonna be here for a very long.
I get it. Yes,
Good morning, my name is Allison Bailey and I own Bailey Vacation Rentals with my mother Julie. I am a resident of 281 Pine Point Road. And I wanted to thank everyone individually for the time here this morning as I understand the seriousness of this. I am here to propose that we do not continue forward with this ordinance due to the great ordinances that are already set in place by the town and that our company very strictly follows. As far as what comes to mind for me and what we provide, we are a family-owned business in a family town with families as guests. And I also employ families and I have 9 staff members that are under the age of 30. So the youth in Maine is very positive for me as well. And so I want to highlight on the fact that this could have a serious effect on our business. And would really like to state that a lot of the homeowners that are in our program are renting their homes to keep their homes. They're not renting their homes to set out on some big retirement goal of a yacht. They are there to cover their taxes and the cost of the home. As far as the safety standards that are proposed, that is something that our team takes greatly seriously. So our team is trained through a safety protocol. We require homeowners to have appropriate insurance. We are checking our smoke detectors, our carbon monoxides, and our fire extinguishers. Our smoke and our carbon are routinely checked. Our fire extinguishers are mounted and tagged by admirals. We are also aware of address markers, slip strips and falls. So the safety precaution is very serious for us. Our team works very hard to ensure that any grievances proposed by any neighbors or guests, we do receive them, that they are addressed immediately and with understanding. Obviously, in a town with a neighborhood very close, there are things that come up, but we do make our team readily available, as well as working, right now, we are proposing a neighbor program.
1
So-
minute.
Thank you very much. So the neighbor program can include our office. So I do want to say that this ordinance here, I think there are a lot of things that are already addressed also at the state level. So any consideration for not continuing forward, this is greatly appreciated as we respect the current ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I'm Kate Boyle. Ellen's online. And I just want to say for your edification, for folks that might be watching, there isn't a single public meeting where I mentioned a name or an address. I came to these meetings, I talked about my personal experience as much as I could in an effort to represent the people who live in suburbia residential districts. What I said at our last meeting was I think this ordinance is excellent in the sense that it balances what the beach people and the residential people have been asking for. The beach people are not having to cap their nights, whether they're there or not. They're not having to get licenses. No licenses are capped. The other items in there are simply balancing residential communities who have short-term rentals in there. And I reiterate, I think it's excellent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Katie Foley, 7 Acorn Lane in Scarborough. I wear all the same 3 hats that Mr. Townsend does, and also the hat of a former town councilor. So I'm just gonna try to keep this really brief. I don't think there's anything I would add to some of the comments that have been made other than this, is that in my experience, both on the council and in working on town issues, one of the things I've observed over time is simply that when an issue comes to the table and we do our due diligence and have a good, robust discussion around it, we often feel that because we spent so much time having that discussion, that we must take action, that something has to change or something has to be done simply because the issue was brought to us. And I guess I sometimes would challenge that way of thinking, because I think the discussion is absolutely paramount and important. But it doesn't always mean that we have to do something. Sometimes no action is the right action. So in this case, I do feel like there's ways that maybe the town and these businesses can even partner more closely together. The neighborhood piece is a little bit different. I don't see there's any issues in the places where we've had this long history. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, anyone else in person? So I have Ellen online is next.
Good morning. I apologize. I'm having some issues with my technology this morning. My camera is not working. I would like to say thank you to the board for the consideration and the council for the meeting this morning, and mirror what my colleagues have indicated. I've been with HigginsBeachMaine.com and Scott Townsend for 15 years, making sure that our guests at the beach have a wonderful vacation and essentially behave themselves and be good neighbors. I've been an active member of the board for the Vacation Rental Professionals of Maine, along with Allison Bailey, for several years. I've recently stepped down. And as part of the Vacation Rental Professionals of Maine, we are held to a standard, much like realtors, of which I have been for 25 years, that we are managing a property appropriately. We understand that vacation rentals and short-term rentals have kind of gained a bit of a bad name in some communities where the properties are not appropriately managed. Like Bailey Vacation Rentals, we adhere to a very strong set of guidelines. Our guests sign a contract with us. Our owners sign a contract. We are advising our owners on safety protocol. We're advising our guests on appropriate behavior as well as safety protocol. In many cases, if we are not managing your property at Higgins Beach, we are working with an owner to discuss safety and regulations and keeping the community advised. And I would like to say again, thank you, and would appreciate that you consider we are attempting to fix a problem that we really don't have at the beach community. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Excellent. The next person I have is Brad. Oh,
Yep. Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time. I once served as planning board chair in Dedham, Massachusetts about 40 years ago, so I know what you're going through. And I've heard, like you, many comments, so I'll try and be brief. I've lived in this house down in Sanctuary Lane in Prouts for 35 years, full time. I'm now 82. And like other seniors are finding it more and more difficult to pay the spectacular rising taxes that the town of Scarborough, especially in the beach areas, are famous for. Frankly, the taxes I pay are about equivalent to my Social Security benefits, which doesn't make any sense. But anyway, if you enact this ordinance, I don't want to get too personal, but you put me at risk of maintaining this property, which has been in my family since the Homer family, since 1882, when the Homers bought all that land down there. This is one piece they didn't sell to the Rockefellers and so forth. They kept it in the family. And so I'm lucky enough to be able to convert a garage into a house over years. All the people that rent my house are well known to us. Many are repeat renters. I know them well, and Agent Leslie Craig down there knows them as well. They're repeat renters. One thing that I find curious about this legislation is it exempts bed and breakfasts from the ordinance, which doesn't make any sense to me. Do they have the knowledge that and the protection that Airbnb hosts have, for example, such as identity check and who's renting, comments from prior hosts, lots of insurance, 3 million property damage?
1 minute, please.
I won't take a minute, sir. I thank you for your service on the board. I'm a former Commodore at the yacht club down there. in some, I'll just say it very simply, why are you trying to regulate how we live? We know how to rent our houses. We don't need this. This is not helpful legislation. We don't need it. Thanks very much. And again, thank you for your time this morning and your service to the town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's anyone else online, we are out of time. Please, if you can, just send me an email or give me a call. My email is aspeer@scarboroughmaine.org. And then everything online on our website, my contact information is there as well. Thank you.
Autumn, would you like to
Yeah.
kick us off?
So this particular item, I think in the memo that I provided and I gave you a background of the different iterations of this project. It's been on the council radar for a bit. I've been working on it for almost 2 years. It did get paused last September. And then, to be perfectly honest, I didn't do anything with it over the winter. And then when it showed up on council goals again this year, picked it back up, reached out. I had some specific emails I had received that said, hey, include me in a meeting. So I'm like, okay, let's have a meeting and see where we are with this. So that was that meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. And so the draft that you have in your packet is the draft that we spoke about at that meeting. And then a few changes came out of that meeting specifically. I'm happy to go through the presentation and give you sort of the deep dive of how we got here, or we can talk about the specifics of the ordinance. Just 1 second, Peter. I will say that I'm going to schedule another, just a open house sort of public meeting early May. And my plan is to get some help to reach out to all of the homeowners and business owners that are currently on social media renting their properties and sending invites to everybody I can come up with. So there will be much more opportunity to talk about this moving forward.
Peter?
I'm struggling to understand why this is on Rick's agenda.
I'm sorry.
I'm struggling to understand why this is on long range planning's agenda.
I agree.
We've got 2 years of background where this has been in the ordinance committee and the town council's state. If I look at the charter of the long range planning committee, we have a charter that really oversees the implementation of the comprehensive plan. Shorter term rentals never came up in the plan. And are neither in the plan. I went back and kind of reviewed a lot of the materials from the charrettes and things. This just was not part of the comprehensive plan process. And on top of which, the proposed ordinance is really a health and safety ordinance.
Peter, did you get an opportunity to look at the town council workshop from 24?
Not from 24, no, but I stand kind of firmly in this. I do not understand why the town council is kicking this back to us.
That's why I'm trying to get maybe an answer. What the town council in essence did was kick it back to Autumn and ask her to come up with the boundaries, if you will, of what an ordinance might look like to go to the ordinance committee, which is, I believe, why it's now at our table. So,
well, what I say, Alan, is this is again a health and safety regulation.
No question.
We're called together as a long range planning committee because of our interest and and because of the 4 corners of the long range planning committee's charter, which is about planning issues, zoning issues, etc. I don't know how to govern the insurance regulations and the inspection process for an Airbnb, a B&B, a hotel. I don't know. And I'm struggling to understand the competence of this committee to deal with a regulation of this type. So.
Yep. Rick?
Absolutely agree. Because I don't have any idea why this is before this committee. I looked at this stuff last night. I've been following it. I mean, only in the broadest sense of our charge is a registration ordinance fall within the purview of this committee. This is a policy decision. It's up to the council to make the decision. I don't think we should spend any further time on this at all. We're acting sort of like a public hearing. And I appreciate the comments of everybody, but the comments belong at the council level and maybe the ordinance committee and not this committee. We're charged with, if you look online, developing recommendations on managing the town's future growth and development. In a very broad sense, I suppose, allowing short-term rentals throughout town, as I understand it, maybe has an impact on growth and development, but I just don't understand the reason it's Autumn's got it, because Autumn's such a good draftsperson and understands the ordinance better than any other. But I don't know why we're even considering this. I'm happy to listen to the discussion, but what are we supposed to do at the end of this meeting? So I just think it's at the wrong thought, given the nature of an ordinance that is primarily aimed at registration. It's not a whole lot different than requiring building permits from people who want to build a new garage.
No, I guess from my perspective, I understand what you're both saying. But oftentimes this committee has been asked to provide. Provide some form of guidance to how an ordinance might be written. And then take that and send it to the ordinance committee as a suggestion, I'll call it, as to how they can get their arms around it and what they may or may not want to do. I think this is just another one of those situations where we've been asked to kind of say, okay, what could this look like? And I think one of the differences, if you will, between something like an Airbnb, for example, is that this strictly has to do with a renter's situation as defined that is less than 28 days. I think it's less than 28 days or 28 days and less than 28 days, so that it becomes different from the other ordinances that we have currently in place where people rent for a month at a time, for example.
Alan, everything you're saying is right, but none of it puts this ordinance in front of our committee.
I think you're conflating the role of the ordinance committee and certainly the council with this committee. That I just don't.
And the more that we act just as an ordinance vetting body, the less and less we are dealing with the implementation of the comprehensive plan. We are well off of our agenda and our timing that we wanted to look at, for example, the zoning in the rural district and whether the single use of a rural district on both sides of the turnpike is appropriate.
Just to say, that didn't show up on council goals, so that's not on our agenda for the year.
Well, but the thing is, our agenda is on some level set by our charter.
I would argue that it's actually set by the town council goals to implement, and
Then I'd like the town council to say that explicitly, because if that's the case, then I volunteered my time and I have become part of this committee under false pretenses.
Understand.
So if the town council is telling me I've got to be an ordinance vetting committee, let me know and I'll submit my resignation today.
Yeah, I don't think it's an ordinance vetting, Peter, and just for a high level.
That's what we're doing.
I am asking, you all are the best committee that I have to run things through. And what it sounds like is you all don't see a land use problem with allowing short-term rentals in town. And so there's no concerns about affordability or impacts to home ownership or ADUs or anything. And so I can take that information and continue to work on it. I just thought you all are a good group to ask for information and.
But that's not the question before this committee. The question is a health and safety and registration ordinance. It's not an ordinance about land use or affordable housing or whether this is we're not gonna, by passing this, I think one of the public people pointed out, by passing this, we're not limiting anything. We're just putting up a registration and a check the box thing. If we're dealing with the availability of affordable housing, either in a zone or townwide, great. That's not what this is. This is just a health and safety and registration ordinance.
I don't have a position, so one way to go. I doubt Peter does either, well, maybe, but it's not this committee's role to take a position on this or any other item that comes to us. Our role is to run these types of, on this one per se, but ordinance changes as they relate to zoning, development, and the comprehensive plan. So, and I wouldn't want this meeting to end with a story in the now online leader that's a comprehensive plan, land use, land. What we're called, I'm so confused. Planning committee doesn't think this is a good idea.
Sure.
I just don't think it's our roles. This is.
Yeah, and I apologize. I wasn't asking you to say if it was a good idea or not. I was asking you to say, have I missed something? Is there something else I should consider? But I'm perfectly comfortable taking it out of this setting, voting it, and we'll continue on with ordinance committee and outside public.
I
That's
think that.
perfectly
I
fine.
think, because I think asking us to determine whether something's missing or should be added to this is beyond our competence.
Portia's had her hand up.
I was going to say, in terms of long-range planning, and kind of to Rick and Peter's point, is broad range. If there was somebody coming in and saying, I'm going to turn a whole bunch of properties into a rental property, and this is what I want to do with it, short term, okay, then maybe we need to consider that, but that's not what this is about. This is about existing properties. The other cases would be theoretical grandfather, given the length of time. And I would think at this point, what you're asking the committee to do is to say, is this an appropriate use or not an appropriate use?
And if that's the case, then we have to go down to the zoning. So if, for example, we were saying, and I'm pulling it out of my own personal experiences, exactly. If the Pine Point, town and village property, or village, town and village zone down there by the candy factory, we want to prohibit short-term rentals from that, say.
Mhm.
That to me would be something that would come to this. Because it's the zone.
Sure.
And we're making a decision to either explicitly exclude something, or we could, on the other side, we're going to focus development of short-term rentals in a given zone. That to me now becomes a land use and a zoning issue.
Yep.
For this, I don't know how to,
Yeah,
I don't know
I
how to do it.
totally appreciate that. That's fine.
So,
I just want to make sure if Robin has a comment, she gets an opportunity.
No, I appreciate Autumn actually bringing it to us, because I didn't realize it was as big a deal as it is in town. And anytime that we can provide, sort of, you go girl, I'll do that, and anytime we can provide input, but at this point, I'm a little overwhelmed and I'm still trying to catch up. But thank you for the opportunity to speak up.
Sure.
Do you all want to make a motion that this just moves to the ordinance committee for further discussion and you don't have it?
Somebody feels like they would like that make that motion?
I would like to move that we refer this to the ordinance committee without comment.
Second.
All right, so we have Peter and Rick. Any discussion? Yes, Robin?
Yes, I'd like to just say that if staff or the ordinance committee has a question on that fits within the charter of the long range planning committee, we'd be happy to take it up in the future.
Okay.
All right, we'll call a roll. Alan?
Not like that.
I guess, my feeling here is that, I'm not exactly sure why we're not willing to at least address the issue. And so I'm going to say no.
Rick?
Yes.
Portia?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Robin?
What's the motion?
To pass this on to the ordinance committee without comment,
Without comment?
without comment.
Well, maybe the comment is. Tell the ordinance committee, we don't think it's appropriate. for us.
Yes.
I guess. I just need, I don't know, I'm a little. I'm with Alan, I'm gonna say no.
Nothing wrong with
So that's 3-2.
it.
3-2, motion approved.
All right,
All right, now,
thank you. And for you all in the audience, you're welcome to stay as we talk about shooting ranges.
I have like.
But I will also offer that I will be updating our website on a pretty regular basis. And again, feel free to reach out to me personally, as it looks like I am now on my own.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Analyzing as if that honor was.
Next. Item number 502, our next item.
Thanks, Sean.
Discuss and consider a recommendation to the ordinance committee defining indoor sports shooting ranges, specifying where such use may be permitted and establish performance standards.
All right.
And I would ask if there is anyone in the public who is interested in making comments on this item.
I see none.
Can I ask, do we have an actual formal request yet?
We did, but his request was, it's in your packet,
Mhm.
but it was more generic.
Yeah, it was still very generic.
Yeah.
It's not really
I specifically have had a pre-application meeting with him, our
Okay.
staff, so I know the site he was originally looking at.
Mhm.
But when we were talking, he did make his specific, request more generic, so if he had some flexibility in the district. Because last time we talked about, the request he came in with was in the B3 zone.
Mhm.
And based on our conversations last time, I've removed those
Mhm.
districts and just concentrated on LI and I. And then if in the packet, I'll be perfectly transparent. I'm scared to do anything to LI right now. I've spent 2 years of my life
Yeah.
in the LI district. So the idea of adding something to that, even as a special exception, keeps me up a little bit. And the industrial district, which I don't see any issue with that, does have a 2,000 square foot limitation on retail. Yeah, so we'd have to change that or do something with that.
Can I ask
Go ahead.
something? His firing range committee weighed in on us.
The committee has it. We did have Ron join us last
Right,
month
I
and
was
gave us
here.
some input. Yeah, but I haven't had them weigh in because this wouldn't have any. We decided to strike anything. I had originally had a definition, remember, for the outdoor.
Yeah,
Took all that away. I did reach out to the state shooting range. I think his name is Greg, or maybe that's his last name. He basically told me that it was up to the town. There's no state and federal laws that we have to comply with. The NRA has a publication from 2012 that I can purchase for $54 but I did not purchase, they use to construct them. It's
Right.
basically all the things that you have to do. Gray, I reached out to Gray and they told me that Howell's gun range, and I gave you the links to that. They went through as retail, but it's been quite some time. The one in Wyndham has now shut down, and I think they did the same thing. They shut down in December.
I do not know.
So what I found was not super helpful. Basically that anything extra we'd want to put in would kind of be on us.
I'll just also offer, as I'm also liaison with the firing range committee, a lot of overlap all around here. And it just happened that we had kind of our introductory meeting with me as the new council rep around the time, I think it was just a few days after this group discussed this last time, like roughly a month ago. And as Ron had indicated at the, as a member of the public at the long range meeting, that group is ready to weigh in if and when appropriate. And they also kind of reiterated their willingness to organize a field trip to Gray if it is felt that would be appropriate or potentially helpful. They're not acting as advocates, they just want to be a resource.
So, are we having a general discussion at this point or?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, I think taking out the LI district is understandable, from a pragmatic perspective regarding LI. And normally I would say we should include LI in there, but I understand the broader issues with the LI district, that I understand the pragmatic to that. But one thing I'll note, and I was thinking about this with regard to the industrial districts. In the industrial district, or the industrial park right now, there's that, there's a daycare center with a pool attached to it. I mean, it always struck me as odd that that's in the industrial park, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's there. Would that be subject to the 1,000-foot?
Yeah.
Because
I think so.
I worry that if that were subject to it, we're now, and we were to locate a gun shop or a range elsewhere in that conformed with the 1,000-foot limit, we essentially set a very large exclusion zone around that gun, the indoor shooting facility. And given the very limited amount of industrial land that we have as a town, do we want to be setting up exclusion zones? And therefore, do we come to an argument where we might not want to allow an indoor shooting range simply because of the economics and the availability of land in our industrial zones? I come to this with sort of a general view, which is I don't really have a problem locating one of these in an industrial zone. But we just have a limited amount of industrial zone property left. And this kind of puts a big cone of silence around it, or it's the wrong, a big zone around it. So that's the thought that occurred to me overnight. But I don't know where to go with that, but I don't want to raise that.
Well, let me see if I can help the process just a little here. Given the fact that we've got 4 ranges, I believe, already in the town, based on our meeting last month. And recognizing that at this point, none of them are indoor ranges. I guess I think for the town size that we are, I'm not exactly sure that we need an indoor range in town at this time. And so, given that fact, I would like to move that we not consider having an indoor range in our current ordinance.
I'd second that up.
So we have a motion and a second. Now we'll open it up to discussion. Once again.
I have a potential correction, but I could be wrong, okay? I do believe there's an indoor range at Scarborough Fishing Game.
No, there's an indoor range on Holmes Road. We talked about that last week.
Well, that's right, I forgot about that, but I'm also talking about there is one at Scarborough Fishing Game too. There's a pistol, I don't know what the heck, but it's
Right.
indoor.
But they're grandfathered.
Could I?
But they would be
Oh,
grandfathered.
Yeah.
So
Both of them are.
That's also just that's a private membership.
Right, that's correct.
Organization.
It's not a
like
business.
golf club.
Retail.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And not retail, exactly.
It's not retail.
Right. Excuse me one second. Thank you. Robin,
Thank you so much. I second what you're saying, that 4 ranges is enough for this community, and but I would like to say that, like, if any of the existing ranges would like to build their own indoor range, I mean, I wouldn't rule that out, I guess, but I completely agree with you both, Mr. Chair, and with Peter.
I also put out for Robert, those are in rural districts. And would have a different set of considerations that would go along with them. And I would be much more at ease approving a special exception use of an indoor range on an existing outdoor range facility in a rural zone, in an RF zone. That
as,
to me now makes sense.
The other point,
Did you
though,
get-
the fact that there's light industrial, if we have no more light industrial, we have no more light industrial, so there's no place to put them. So I kind of miss that fact, although, I don't think that an indoor range is the highest and best use for light industrial, period. But I do like the idea that if you're gonna put it somewhere, it's gonna be light industrial or an existing grandfathered facility kind of a thing, so.
Karen?
I just had a technical question on zoning. So if our ordinance is such that if it's not specifically listed, then it can't be done. But do we have issues with, you have to allow uses somewhere in the, in the town with,
it's not come up since I've been here in
Okay.
this state. I did reach out to our council
Good.
about this, and he did tell me that the town communities in Maine do have the right to regulate shooting range.
okay,
So I
Okay.
started with that because the gun sales can occur in retail and
Right.
right,
it's a
okay.
shooting range that we don't speak to, so.
And we don't sell marijuana retail.
Right.
Well, and exactly, I mean, we went through this whole thing with cannabis. And we had to decide, do we want this in our community or don't we? And I think, maybe we don't want this. And so eventually, over time, somebody could appeal. But
Yeah, so the cannabis, just a technicality, cannabis came down through the state, giving you 5 options. So it
Right.
specifically allowed the town to exclude those uses. And I just have this,
There's state legislation that allows us to regulate them. So
Yeah. Okay.
By not allowing them, we're regulating. them. That's
Yes.
what I would
cool.
argue.
I just want to make sure we're not running afoul of
Yeah,
that.
because it's especially
Right.
called out use. That's what
Right.
I wanted to check. Because I know what you're.
Yeah, when I'm,
Yeah.
we don't want to be, I prefer not to be sued. Okay, that was my.
Right. Any other comments, Rick? No? Seeing no additional discussion, can we take a vote on that, please?
So the motion is to not consider moving indoor sport shooting ranges forward.
Correct.
Alan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes,
and Jean Marie. Are you voting? Oh,
No.
Portia, I'm sorry.
Oh, Portia.
Portia. Sorry about that.
Oh, Portia, stay high. Yes.
We're not used to having you in the room. That's the problem.
Make sure I'm not blocking you.
Well, I know Peter has a large. Just blocks me out.
Did you say yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
There you go.
Agenda got a little short.
That's easy.
All right. So that is the last item on the agenda in terms of things that we need to discuss, other than we'll go around the room and I will look for comments. I'll start with Jean Marie and go around.
I had no comment, believe it or not.
Quickly,
Yeah,
Council Fellows.
what did you do? What did you do, Tina?
Yeah, just very quickly, it was interesting to hear the discussion around short-term rentals, and I'm coming into this, a little late. And I do think there may be some things related to short-term rentals that could play into the council's kind of emerging discussion around housing affordability. That wasn't really the focus of what was in front of this group this morning. As was indicated, it was more of a regulatory health and safety sort of thing. I don't mean to suggest that I or anyone else is necessarily looking to restrict short-term rentals, but there have been instances in certain communities where the prevalence of that has sometimes impacted the overall market. So I think that might be worth looking at some point, but beyond that, I can understand folks' stance on that, given the charge of this group, and it is a tricky one, and this committee and its mission and the way it works has definitely evolved over time. Appreciate everyone's comments. Thanks.
Rick? Portia? Peter?
I voiced some frustration earlier, and I'll kind of reiterate it here. if the town council is effectively saying that their goals mean that long-range planning is not going to continue, at least temporarily, its mission of implementing the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, then I'd like an explicit mention of a discussion of that. Because that's what it feels like. We've parked all of the discussion that we had been generating about the changes to zoning or considerations of zoning, considerations for direction of the town and village zones, for the growth areas versus the non-growth areas of town, et cetera. And we've been dealing with what I very much feel like are minutia right now. We're being reactive to things that come in the autumn from a guy who wants to maybe potentially in the future open an indoor gun range. And now being effectively used as a dumping ground for talking about any and all ordinances that are before the ordinance committee. If that's what LRPC is going to become, I'd like to be told that explicitly through an amendment to the charter of the committee, so I can respectfully resign. Because I'm here because I love the planning issues that this town is facing. I love them from their complexity. I love them from the proactive steps we took in creating the 2021-2022 comprehensive plan. And the roadmap that gave us to try and shape the town that we want to have, or we want to live in, not just tomorrow, but 20 years from now. We're not doing that. And if that's because Autumn and the planning group feel that they are constrained by a set of very short-term goals expressed by the town council, so be it. But again, let me know. I'll resign and I'll just focus on the zoning board. Or you've got a charter that gives us more than enough runway to implement the comprehensive plan. Let us do our job. I'm disappointed with how the town council has been directing staff and has been using this committee for the last several months. I don't see a change in it, unfortunately. Again, just be explicit about it. Just let us know as members so we know what we're getting into. We're volunteers.
So are you speaking for the?
No, I'm speaking for me.
Okay,
Just want to understand, when we were going to consolidation, like a design, resolving all the design issues and so on. That you're wanting to get back to that as opposed to doing this.
That was the stuff that we came out of.
I just wanted to
from the
understand.
comments.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Can I just, what was I gonna say? I want to respond. But a quick bit of history. When not the last comment, but the one before was adopted, which I chaired. There was no long range plan committee. And one of the recommendations coming out of that comp plan was that we should form a committee to deal with and address and implement various things that comp plan suggested needed to happen, zoning. And I think, as I recall, Alan, the name of the committee was the
CPIC, Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee.
As time went on, the council decided we really need a long range planning. And for all intents and purposes, the original committee was CPIC. The members that were on that committee who had been on the long range planning committee were effectively appointed the long range planning committee. I'm not sure today the mission of long range planning committee is quite consistent with CPIC, but it should be. And I think Pete is dead on when he focused on the fact that short-term rental ordinance probably is not something within this committee's purview. Maybe the long-range planning committee's mission needs to change. But right now, I think we have to be careful that we don't morph into an adjunct ordinance committee or an adjunct council making recommendations up and down on things, and rather focus on the implications of proposed ordinance changes as they relate to zoning, land use, and development.
Well, maybe we need a short range.
Well,
and I guess and part of that is you said exactly right. Maybe there is a need for a different type of committee that acts as an adjunct to the board committee or does performs that role that the council feels is required. But right now, we've got a long range planning committee with a fairly clear charter. And we're not acting, or we're not being asked to act according to the full corners of that.
Right, thank you. Robin,
I don't mind being asked these questions of short range versus long range. If staff needs some guidance, I think I feel like we can offer some. However, I do agree with Peter that we have bigger fish to fry, in that I apologize for sort of putting words in your mouth, but sitting on the vulnerability assessment working group, we're looking at least there's a family in the Pine Point area who I think has 7 commercial properties that may become not viable by the 2070 due to sea level rise. And we have roadways that are part of an important infrastructure to get people to hospitals, to get people to work, that we have to be tackling here very soon. So my comment to you all, if these are like member comments, is we've got a lot of work to do coming from the vulnerability assessment group. And oh yeah, I'm on open space too. And we have this goal of trying to get to 30% land conservation by 2030. These are ordinances that I want to put in place. We had, I mentioned last time, we had dozens and dozens of citizens coming to the council to talk about the need for expanding wetland protections so that we can protect our way of life and the city's brand. And these are things that I want to work on. I remember a meeting about 1.5 years ago where, we got to get some low impact development standards on the book real fast. Haven't heard anything about that. I want to know what's happening with low impact development standards. So I don't mind reserving a little bit of time for these small issues, but when we already have 4 gun ranges in town, I'm with you. I don't want to hear about an indoor gun range. I really don't. And I was serious when I said last time, tell them to go to Saco. Honestly, we have a lot more going for us in the town of Scarborough than that.
thank you. Rachel,
As I looked at the short-term rental, the only thing, relationship I saw that might possibly be there with the planning board would be parking. Because there was some, you've got to set up parking for a certain number of, rooms or people. Other than that, I wasn't sure, basically the planning board had nothing to do with what was going on there.
Yeah.
So I would have voted, I guess with majority had I a vote. The only thing that I would raise for some consideration at some point. And I do agree with Robin, we've got an awful lot more to deal with. We're called the planning board and we don't do any planning really. We look at stuff that comes before us. We might approve a master plan, but it's kind of been discussed in a great many other places before it gets to us as a planning board. So we're kind of a regulatory board that says, yeah, everybody's done everything that meets the guidelines, off you go. Considering the experience on the planning board of the people that we have on there, I would offer that sometimes our expertise is wasted. And as we start to look at what's going on with the with long range planning and what we have coming before us, is there a place, and this is up to the town council really, is there a place for the planning board to do more of what it could do very well in terms of looking at land use and really indulging in some planning rather than awful lot of after the fact approvals.
thank you.
making it development review.
Well, I don't know where it would go. It just seems to me that there is kind of a wasted opportunity.
We have two public hearings coming before you all next Tuesday, about the EV ordinance that came from sustainability, and then an adjustment to our stream protection overlay. And so I think in that sense, those public hearings and you all's guidance and input on that, that's extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Because you're real world reviewing it, whereas when it goes to council, you're relying on planning board for that real world.
Yeah.
Is this actually going to be something that works? I think that's really where your power or,
Yeah,
input is.
and I would say that's relatively minor in terms of our time.
I think you're gonna get a lot more.
Oh, good.
I
Don't tell me.
think you're gonna see
Don't let
more
anybody
of
know that I
those.
said that.
Yeah.
I do think that there's an opportunity there. I don't know what it is. I like the public hearings.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that does bring forward the experience that folks have had. I do think, though, recently, well, in the last 9 years I've been on the board, planning board, we've gotten into just a kind of an after the fact approval, making sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and thank you very much. So I don't know what else we can do, but I know in other towns, the planning board actually plans and maybe functions more as the long range planning committee.
Well, some towns have, you're part of the development review process and I'll just leave it at that. I think we're gonna have a lot of public hearings that'll give you all some things to do, but I will say that when we went through all.
We've got plenty to do, but
There's a lot. When we went through all the design standards and all those things, that was really where you all had that opportunity to say, because you are the regulatory body to make sure things. And where I came from away, the planning board was a rubber stamp for a lot of items. And it's just yep, you meet the requirements and you're good. But we did more plan developments and specific use permits and things like that, where you got more into it, kind of, some of those where we have the master plans. It's more interesting. I think you get a little bit more into it, but a lot of it is kind of rubber stamping.
I'll take one last
Just
comment from
quickly, that comment, the town of Freeport has two bodies.
Yeah.
The planning board, which is what you're talking about, and the project review board, which is the equivalent of Scarborough's planning. They have already recognized the need for a body that does planning stuff rather than project review stuff.
So you're all scaring me a lot. I'm like, we
I've
have
been told I do that.
we
by a lot
have
of
a
people,
development review committee that reviews everything before it gets to planning board, and it consists of myself, my planner, the town engineer, public works director, the fire, public safety, our traffic peer reviewer, and our engineering peer reviewer. That all of the applicants spend probably $4,000 to $5,000 to get all of those professional reviews from our offsites. We spend time all day on Wednesdays. We go through Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we meet with the applicants, give them comments, and then what we bring to the planning board is the cleaned up and improved version that we think they can offer in on those few items that are remaining or that we couldn't get to as staff.
and by the way,
Yeah.
there's been a tremendous help and it's very different than when I came on the planning board originally. So the process has been improved 150%.
But we have all of the professional entities. I mean, we don't just say, yeah, here's your submittal, take it to plan.
That relates to pre-planning review
Right, that's the development review committee that
versus
goes through.
entirely separate body that focuses on the streets, street landscaping, and things
Well,
like that, but,
So, and
Which is what our committee is.
well,
So-
that's the other
let
issue.
me get to my staff updates, because I'm about to make you excited, okay? So. the open-
Can I slow you down?
Yeah,
All right, because I'll get to you.
okay.
I get my chance.
Okay.
On the board. You're on the ordinance committee?
Yes, I also chair the Rules and Policy Committee.
All right.
So to the extent that there could be a review of charters and things like that, that would fall under that.
All right. So given that you're gonna see this potentially again, what I would like to suggest is that, first of all, I'm not sure I like the name that we had today of short-term rental registration ordinance, because I think it's a lot more than that. And one of the things that I would hope that as this gets to the ordinance committee, that you consider that we're not just trying to register properties that want to do something like an Airbnb, but the other side of this was to, and I use the term, put a little meat on the bone for our police department, our fire department, places that need to go into these facilities and do some inspections to make sure that safety is considered highly for the renters that are coming into these facilities, as well as the people who own them. But part of the ordinance put meat on that bone so that there was clear direction or clearer direction as to what the other departments of the town could use in order to effectively administer this program. So I don't want people to think that this is just about collecting a fee that says you can now use some form of service to rent your building for certain periods of time, short-term rental wise. So that was my concern for not wanting to vote for this, because I knew that there was a lot more involved than just registering the property. It was to help the rest of the town administer these rentals to make sure that they were safe for the renters coming in. So I hope that when you see this in the ordinance committee, that you look at that, make sure you feel like that's complete before you pass it on to the council, and hopefully support that if it goes to the council moving forward. So just a little bit more than a registration process.
Understood.
Um,
I'll note just for the record, Councilor Shoup, who is the chair of the ordinance committee, is online. And so she's hearing that as well.
right, she's in the shadow, but I know you're there, Karen. But yeah, I mean, that was just something that was made very, very clear. What, Tuesday? At the meeting that we had, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, but it doesn't matter, but it was all part of that. So that's my comments, if you will, for today. I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna leave you for last so that you can, you can just go for it. Karen.
Just want to remind people, we have the Route 1 public meeting next week, right, on the 15th?
Yep.
Route 1, you mean?
It's the
Sorry.
reimagine Route 1 and Route 1, however you want to say it, but it's from north of Falmouth all the way down to, they tried to go to Arundel, but I think they stopped.
Is this GP Plug?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a charrette, there's pizza.
What time?
I believe it's
5:30.
At 7.
And then you also have a budget roundtable, so if you get
Yes.
bored there, you get pizza and go talk about budget.
Right.
Yeah. I won't say Haggis, will you? Helen? No comment.
All right, so last time, and I owe you all something, Peter asked for it, kind of a schedule and an outlook, and I'm just too busy and I didn't get to it this time. But I'm going to get it because you all took some things off your agenda, so that's great. But the open space master plan is hopefully going to be accepted next Wednesday at council. And we will do an unveiling of our display for the 30 by 30 achievement, and we are at 23%, so it's really exciting.
Wow.
That plan has a list of recommendations and assigned parties. So there are some ordinances, there are some reviews that will come. I feel some of those will come to you all for input. That is directly in our comp plan, that open space plan and conservation. Our vulnerability assessment is moving forward. It's a bit delayed. We'll probably end up with a workshop at council in August. that will have, to Robin's point, we'll have a lot of things that we will have work to do for that.
It was part of the problem.
And it's part of the comp plan. And the transportation assessment, it's on staff right now to wrap that up, but there will be things that come out of that. I will say that GP Cog, we just picked off, we're going out for our, well, actually they have a consultant they can select from to do a complete streets toolkit. And update our policy on traffic control. So we're gonna have a consultant-led exercise. I feel that you all will be really involved with that if you want to be. The complete streets will really look at all of the different, what I am excited about is to look at all the different parts of our town and treat them differently with pedestrian, cyclists, accessibility, all those things. So you're gonna see things about that. My capital improvements request this year, and I feel really confident in it getting approved, is for Trails and Sidewalk Master Plan. That's an amazing project that's in the comp plan that ties together recreation, conservation, transit opportunities, mobility, all the things. And so you guys will have part of that.
And that should inform things like what we think of the rural districts.
Exactly.
And whether we have correct differentiation among our residents.
So while some of the things that you all had wanted to work on didn't make it to council goals, the council goals are very, I think they're much more long range than they appear at the surface with all the things that come out of them. So I think you'll have a lot. I don't want to lose you, and I don't want you to get discouraged. And I will not use you all for a sounding board for these requests anymore. I will go directly to ordinance committee. So there's no peace.
Look out ordinance.
It's their charter. It's actually says so in their charter.
I used to be the
I
chair of
know.
ordinance.
I know.
But one thing, and I'll tell on you, is Eastern Trail completion contracts. going
Yes,
on
yes,
there.
bit of
Yeah.
yes.
I walked in there like once.
Is there any federal money involved? Because if there is, you're kissing the.
Well, I
right
know,
now.
I know, I don't
There's a lot of.
I
money
no, I
involved.
don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm gonna put on my county commissioner hat, which I know I'm thrilling everybody lately because of our budget increase. And I'm already hearing from finance committee members here in the council, but that being said, it's awful out there because we are the place where a lot of federal funds flow through. And the taps have all been turned
Well,
off.
that's true for vulnerability too. with some
I
major
know,
projects
so
like
just,
that one.
not to be a Debbie Downer, but keep planning, keep whatever, but
I'm
boy,
just
I'll
saying,
tell
by
you.
the time we got this solved, the contract, I mean, that's huge.
No, and I don't, but I'm like, oh, for God's sake, there's the money now.
I would take a different view on that, Jean Marie, that instead of the nudge capacity that we have in things like zoning regulation and planning. And stating what our objectives are via the ordinances becomes even more important when we know we have.
Oh, but I'm not saying, that. I'm just saying to keep in mind, that the reality of what's going on out there. It's not.
I'm not sure this discussion is in the purview of the.
No, it's not.
Long-Range
You're right.
Planning
Correct.
Committee also.
That's correct.
So
We veered off.
at this point, based on our agenda, the chair would certainly entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Peter, thank you. Thank you, Rick. Any discussion? Seeing none. Do we need a roll call or a hand?
Rick, I'm gonna go really fast.
Okay,
Yes.
Alan, Rick.
yes.
Portia,
Yes.
Peter, Robin.
Yay, bye, thank you,
all.
yes.
Next meeting, I don't have that in front of me.
It's May 9th.
May 9th, thank you.
Yeah.